The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep hum. Inside, representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their designated seats, talking among themselves. The chamber was enormous, with walls that seemed to stretch forever upward. Lights danced across the ceiling like stars, reflecting the thoughts and moods of everyone present. Then the talking stopped. An old creature entered the room without permission. She walked on 6 legs, moving slowly but with purpose. Her skin shimmered with dull colors that had once been bright. This was Elder Mara, one of the ancient Velkarn people. The Velkarn almost never left their library worlds where they kept records of everything that had ever happened in the galaxy. Ambassador Thorn, an insect-like being with large compound eyes, leaned forward in his seat. He recognized trouble when he saw it approaching. Honored members of the council, Mara's voice filled the room through translation devices. I have traveled very far to warn you about the new species you recently discovered. The ones you call humans from the planet Earth. A large alien named Counselor Vex laughed. His laugh sounded like clicking sounds that the translators turned into actual laughter. The humans? Elder Mara, surely you did not come all this way to talk about those weak creatures. Mara's head crest turned bright purple, which meant she was angry. She pulled out a crystal from her bag and placed it on the floor. Immediately, images appeared in the air above it. The images showed records from tens of thousands of years ago. 50,000 years in the past, my people lived in a different galaxy, Mara explained. We met a species there that was exactly like these humans. We studied them carefully and wrote down everything we learned before a terrible disaster forced us to escape our galaxy. The floating images showed creatures that walked on 2 legs. They had no claws like the Chitauri. They had no thick armor like the Valtori. They had no sharp teeth or poison like many other species. They looked soft and defenseless. Ambassador Lyra, whose people had mastered energy weapons thousands of years ago, tilted her head. They look very ordinary. Actually, they look quite weak. That is exactly the problem, Mara said, her voice carrying a warning. That is what makes them so different from anyone else. Our ancient records show that humans have something special. They can adapt to almost anything. They never give up, no matter how bad things get. They form emotional connections with other species, even species that look nothing like them. They show crazy bravery when any smart creature would run away. And most importantly, they absolutely refuse to accept defeat. High Chancellor Edmund, the leader of the council, leaned back in his enormous chair. His metal body reflected the lights around him. Elder Mara, we respect your knowledge. But our scientists have studied the humans. They have average strength. Their intelligence is nothing special. They do not even have natural weapons. They fight wars against each other all the time. How can they possibly be dangerous to us? Because you are making a mistake, Mara said quietly, but everyone heard her. You see their kindness and think it means they are weak. You see them working together and think they cannot fight. You are wrong about both things. Counselor Vex made a dismissive sound. What should we do then? These humans have only just learned how to travel faster than light. They control one small solar system. Just one star and a few planets. Treat them as your equals from the very beginning, Mara urged, looking around at all the council members. Give them real responsibilities. Test their character, not their muscles. They will surprise you in ways you cannot imagine. The entire chamber erupted with laughter. It was polite laughter, but laughter nonetheless. These were species that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had technology that seemed like magic. They had defeated every enemy and solved every problem. And this old Velkarn wanted them to be afraid of hairless apes from a backwater planet? Only Ambassador Thorn did not laugh. Instead, he quietly turned on his recording device. He saved every single word that Elder Mara spoke. High Chancellor Edmund raised his hand and the laughter stopped. We shall be fair to the humans. We will offer them probationary membership in our council, just like we do for all new species. We will give them a single colony world. If they succeed there, we will discuss their status again in 10 years. Which world will you give them? Ambassador Thorn asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Edmund looked at his advisors, then smiled. We shall offer them Talvora. More laughter filled the room. Talvora was famous throughout the galaxy as one of the worst death worlds ever discovered. The gravity there was so strong it could crush most species. The plants were poisonous. The animals were aggressive predators. The weather was brutal. No species in recorded history had ever successfully colonized a Class 5 death world. Most gave up within weeks. They will fail within 3 months, Vex predicted confidently. Then they will call us begging for rescue. We will bring them home and give them a safer world. They will learn humility. The council voted. Everyone agreed to give humans the deadly planet Talvora. They thought they were being educational. They thought they were teaching the humans about their proper place in the galaxy. Elder Mara watched the vote with sad eyes. She had tried. She had warned them. But they would not listen. As she turned to leave the chamber, her old legs carrying her slowly toward the door, she stopped and looked back one final time. Her voice carried clearly across the enormous room. You have given them a challenge. You think this will humble them. But challenges are what make humans stronger. They will turn that death world into a garden. They will thrive where you expect them to die. And when the real danger comes, when you finally need them, you will remember this day. You will remember that you laughed. But by then it will be too late to take back your mistake. Not because they will harm you, but because you will finally understand what you missed. You mistake their kindness for weakness. History will prove you wrong. With those words, Elder Mara left the chamber. The council members looked at each other. Then someone made a joke and they all laughed again. They returned to their normal business, discussing trade routes and scientific discoveries. Only Ambassador Thorne sat in silence, watching the recording of Mara's warning play back on his personal device. He studied the ancient records she had shown them. He looked at the images of humans and wondered, what did the old Velkar know that everyone else was missing? He decided to watch the humans very carefully. He would document everything they did on Talvora. And if Elder Mara was right, he wanted to be the first to know. Outside the chamber, Elder Mara walked slowly through the station corridors, heading back to her ship. She whispered to herself in her native language, words that the translators could not hear. They have made the same mistake every powerful civilization makes. They have confused technology with wisdom. They think because humans have simple weapons they must be simple people. But the most dangerous species in any galaxy is not the one with the biggest guns. It is the one that refuses to quit no matter the cost. It is the one that fights not for conquest but for each other. She boarded her ship and set course for her home world. She had done what she could. Now time would tell the rest of the story. And somewhere, on a small blue planet called Earth, humans prepared to meet their new neighbors among the stars, completely unaware that they had just been given a test designed to break them. But humans had never been very good at accepting failure. Captain James Miller stood at the window of the colony ship looking out at their new home. The planet Talvora filled his view, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. It looked beautiful from up here with swirling clouds and blue oceans. But James knew the truth. This planet was a nightmare. Captain, the final scans are complete, said Lieutenant Emma Foster from her station. She was the ship's science officer and one of the smartest people James had ever met. Gravity is 1.4 times stronger than Earth. That means everything will feel 40% heavier. The air is breathable but 70% of the plants produce poison. And sir, the wildlife down there is very aggressive. We are detecting predators as big as elephants. Commander Thomas Blake shook his head. They gave us a death world. The council wants us to fail. James smiled, though his stomach felt tight. Then we will just have to prove them wrong, won't we? The first shuttle landed 3 hours later. When the door opened and the ramp extended, James took the first step onto Talvora. His boots sank into purple grass that reached his knees. The moment he stepped down, he felt the gravity pull at him like invisible hands. His knees almost buckled. Every movement took more effort than it should. This is going to take some getting used to, Emma said, walking down behind him. She moved carefully like someone walking on ice. The first month was brutal. Colonists struggled to do simple tasks. Lifting boxes felt like lifting boulders. Walking felt like hiking uphill constantly. People got tired quickly and needed more sleep. Then the accident started. A botanist named Robert touched a beautiful red flower to take a sample. Within seconds, his hand swelled up like a balloon. Dr. Helen Walsh, the colony's chief medical officer, worked for 6 hours to save his life. After that, she began a project to identify every poisonous plant on Talvora. There were thousands. The predators attacked at night. Creatures that looked like a cross between bears and lizards with too many teeth. They hunted in packs and they were smart. The first week, they killed 3 colonists who had wandered too far from the settlement. Back on Zenith Prime Station, council members watched the satellite feeds with interest. Many had placed bets on how long the humans would last. 2 months, predicted Counselor Vex. Then they will call for evacuation. But humans did not call for evacuation. Instead, they adapted. Dr. Helen Walsh spent 18 hours a day in her laboratory. She did not just identify the poisons in the plants. She created bacteria that could break down those poisons and make them harmless. Within 3 months, the colonists could walk through the forest safely. They had even started using some of the toxic plants as medicine. The engineers built greenhouses using materials they found on Talvora itself. The hunters studied the predators, learning their patterns. They discovered the creatures were territorial and could be scared away with certain sounds. They set up warning systems around the settlement. The children adapted fastest. While adults still struggled with the heavy gravity, kids were running and playing within weeks. Their young bodies adjusted quickly. Soon they were climbing trees that would have been impossible on Earth. 6 months passed. Then something unexpected happened. A young girl named Lucy was playing near the edge of the settlement when she heard a strange sound. She found a creature lying on the ground, bleeding from its side. It had 6 legs and shimmering scales. It was one of the Velkarn observers that the Council had sent to document humanity's failure. The creature's translator device was broken. It could not call for help. Could barely move. Lucy ran back to the settlement and returned with water and bandages. Every day for 2 weeks she visited the wounded Velkarn. She brought food. She changed its bandages. She sat and talked to it even though it could not understand her words. When Dr. Walsh finally repaired the translator, the Velkarn's first question was simple. Why? Why did you help me? I'm nothing like you. I am not even from your world. Lucy looked confused by the question. You were hurt. That is all that matters. The Velkarn observer immediately sent a message to Elder Mara across the galaxy. The ancient records are completely accurate. These humans form emotional bonds with any creature. They help me without expecting anything in return. I do not understand this behavior, but I have witnessed it. Meanwhile, the colony continued to grow. Humans discovered that some of the aggressive predators could actually be tamed. A colonist named William Cooper became famous for befriending a pack of the bear lizard creatures. He fed them, trained them, and soon they were guarding the settlement instead of attacking it. They treat deadly animals like pets, Ambassador Lyra said, watching the satellite feeds in disbelief. The farms began producing food. Not just enough food to survive but surplus food. The humans were using the aggressive plant life as fertilizer. The toxic compounds that killed other species actually helped certain crops grow faster. 1 year after landing on Talvora, the colony had spread across 3 continents. The population had grown. People were healthy. The Death World was becoming a garden world. Ambassador Thorne compiled every report into a secret file. He titled it Humanity Assessment, Urgent Review Required. Every day he added more notes. Every day the humans surprised him again. High Chancellor Edmund reviewed Thorne's reports late one night. He read about the domesticated predators. He read about the converted toxins. He read about the little girl who saved an alien observer simply because it was hurt. This is impossible, Edmund muttered. No species has ever succeeded on a Class 5 death world. Not in 10,000 years of Council history. Counselor Vex still dismissed it. They got lucky. Give them more time. Eventually the planet will defeat them. But in his private chambers, Vex was not so confident anymore. He watched videos of human children laughing and running through forests that should have killed them. He watched human engineers building structures that should have collapsed under the heavy gravity. He watched humans thriving where they should have been begging for rescue. Elder Mara received the reports on her library world. She read them carefully, her old eyes moving across each line. Then she spoke to her assistant. Send a message to Ambassador Thorne. Tell him to watch the humans even more carefully. What they have accomplished on Talvora is just the beginning. Their true nature has not yet been tested. But it will be. Soon. Her assistant looked confused. What do you mean, Elder? Mara's crest flickered with colors that meant worry and anticipation. The scourge is coming. I can feel it. The same enemy that drove my people from our original galaxy all those millennia ago. They move through the darkness between stars, and they are approaching Council space. When they arrive, the galaxy will need the humans. And the Council will finally understand what I tried to tell them. Should we warn the Council? Her assistant asked. No, Mara said quietly. They would not believe me. They did not believe me about the humans, and they will not believe me about the scourge. Some lessons can only be learned through experience. The galaxy is about to receive a very harsh education. On Talvora, Captain James Miller stood on a hill overlooking the main settlement. Lights twinkled in the purple twilight. He could hear children laughing. He could smell food cooking. This death world had become home. Emma Foster joined him. The Council will be reviewing our status soon. Do you think they will accept us as full members? James shrugged. I do not know. But I do know one thing. We proved we belong here. We turned the worst planet they could find into a place where families can thrive. That has to count for something. Neither of them knew that their greatest test was still coming. Neither of them knew that within 2 years, everything would change. The war was coming and humanity would face a choice. Run and hide or stand and fight for people they barely knew. But that was still in the future. For now, the colony on Talvora continued to grow, and the galaxy continued to watch with growing amazement and concern. Warning sirens screamed across every council world at the same time. Scientists monitoring deep space had detected something impossible. Massive objects were tearing through the fabric of space itself, emerging from the darkness between galaxies. The scourge had arrived. High Chancellor Edmund stood in the emergency command center watching screens fill with data. The enemy ships looked organic, like they were alive. They were not made of metal and circuits. They were made of flesh and bone and something else that the scanners could not identify. What are they? Edmund demanded. Ambassador Thorne's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme stress. The Maclith swarm. A hive mind species. According to Velkarn records, they destroyed the original Velkarn galaxy 50,000 years ago. They consume everything in their path. Activate all defense fleets, Edmund ordered. Deploy every weapon we have. The first battle happened at the border system of Rigel. 40 Council warships faced a wall of organic enemy vessels. The Council ships were beautiful, sleek machines that represented 10,000 years of advanced technology. The battle began. Energy weapons lit up the void. Plasma cannons fired streams of superheated gas. Particle beams cut through space at the speed of light. Graviton projectors tried to crush the enemy ships with artificial gravity. For 3 hours it looked like the Council would win easily. Then everything changed. The swarm ships began to adapt. Their organic hulls shifted and changed. The skin that had been vulnerable to plasma grew thick and reflective. The areas damaged by particle beams developed new armor. Within hours, the swarm had evolved complete immunity to every weapon the Council used. The 40 Council ships were destroyed. 5 billion beings died. The swarm moved deeper into Council space. Impossible, whispered Ambassador Lyra, watching the battle recordings. They adapted to everything. Every weapon we have is useless now. 12 worlds fell in the first month. Billions of civilians evacuated, fleeing toward the core systems. Panic spread like fire. Species that had never known defeat were learning what terror felt like. The Council met in emergency session. Every representative looked exhausted and afraid. We must retreat, said Councillor Vex, his voice shaking. Pull all forces back to the core systems. Abandon the outer rim. Unacceptable, roared Lord Regent Marcus, slamming his metal fist on his desk. We cannot abandon our people. There are trillions of beings in those systems. Then what do you suggest? Vex shouted back. Our weapons do not work. They adapt to everything. Edmund closed his eyes. 10,000 years of peace and prosperity were ending. The Council had grown soft, comfortable. They had forgotten what real war felt like. A communication signal interrupted the argument. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a human face. Captain James Miller looked older now, with lines around his eyes and scars on his face from years on the harsh world of Talvora. Council members, James said, we have been monitoring your communications. We know about the swarm. Humanity offers its defense fleet to assist. We have 47 ships ready to deploy immediately. Silence filled the chamber. Edmund felt his heart break a little. The humans were offering to help with their tiny fleet. It was noble, but it was also suicide. 47 primitive human ships against an enemy that had destroyed hundreds of advanced Council vessels. Captain Miller, Edmund said gently, your offer is incredibly brave. But 47 ships against this enemy would accomplish nothing except your deaths. We cannot accept your sacrifice. James's jaw tightened. His eyes grew hard. With all due respect, Chancellor, we are not asking permission. We are deploying anyway. Talvora is in the outer rim. The swarm will reach us eventually. We would rather fight now on our terms than wait to die later. The transmission ended abruptly. Councillor Vex made a sound of disgust. Fools. They will be slaughtered in minutes. What a waste. Ambassador Thorne said nothing. He simply watched the empty screen where James Miller's face had been. Something in the human captain's eyes had caught his attention. It was not fear. It was not even bravery. It was something else. Something determined and cold and calculating. 2 days later, the swarm attacked Kepler Station, a strategic outpost that protected 3 major trade routes. The Council had sent 20 defense ships to hold the position, but everyone knew it was hopeless. The orders were simple: delay the enemy as long as possible while civilians evacuated, then retreat. The Council ships fought bravely but uselessly. Energy weapons splashed harmlessly against evolved swarm armor. One by one the ships fell. The station would be overrun in minutes. Then 47 human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They did not look impressive. They were smaller than Council vessels. Their hulls were plain metal with no elegant curves or artistic designs. They looked primitive and rough. The human fleet moved into formation. Every commander watching the battle expected them to fire energy weapons. Expected them to die heroically but pointlessly. Instead, Rail's guns opened fire. Solid metal slugs launched from the human ships at impossible speeds. The projectiles were not fancy. They were just dense metal accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Simple physics turned into devastating weapons. The swarm ships had never encountered kinetic weapons before. Their evolved defenses were designed for energy attacks. Dense metal moving at hypersonic speed punched through organic hulls like paper. The swarm biology could not adapt fast enough. Then the missiles came. Chemical explosives, primitive by galactic standards. They detonated inside swarm vessels, shredding organic tissue faster than it could regenerate. 3 human ships accelerated to point-blank range, ignoring the danger. They released tactical nuclear weapons. Fission bombs, the kind of weapon the Council had not used in 5,000 years. Considered obsolete. Considered barbaric. The nuclear fire consumed a dozen swarm vessels before their biology could even begin to understand what was happening. The Battle of Kepler Station lasted 42 minutes. When it ended, the swarm fleet was destroyed. The human fleet had lost 8 ships, but they had won. Across Council space, military commanders watched the battle recordings in stunned silence. They used primitive weapons, Ambassador Lyra whispered. Weapons we abandoned thousands of years ago. Ambassador Thorne's compound eyes reflected the light from the screens. Primitive, yes. But the swarm had never encountered them. The swarm evolved to fight advanced civilizations. The humans brought ancient warfare to a modern battle. And they won. High Chancellor Edmund immediately opened a direct channel to the human fleet. James Miller's face appeared on screen. He had a cut above his eye and his uniform was scorched. Captain Miller, how many ships can you deploy? How quickly can you teach us your techniques? James smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been preparing for this moment their entire life. Every human colony is converting to war production right now. We will build as many ships as you need. We will teach you everything we know about kinetic warfare, chemical explosives, nuclear weapons, and physical combat tactics. But Chancellor, you need to understand something about humans. We have been fighting wars since we learned to pick up rocks. War is not something we are good at. War is what we are. Elder Mara watched the battle recordings from her library world. Her assistant stood beside her, confused. I do not understand, Elder. The humans won with old weapons. How did they know this would work? Mara's crest shimmered with sad colors. Because humans never stopped studying war. While other species pursued peace and art and science, humans studied all of those things plus warfare. Every generation of humans learned new ways to kill efficiently. They hoped they would never need those skills. But they learned them anyway. The Council thought humans were primitive because they still used bullets and bombs. The Council was wrong. Humans are not primitive. They are experienced. She turned to her assistant. Send a message to the Council. Tell them the war has truly begun. Tell them humanity will save the galaxy. But tell them also to count the cost. Because humans will pay in blood for every victory. That is their nature. They will sacrifice everything to protect others. On the bridge of his flagship, James Miller looked at the casualty reports. 8 ships lost. 2,300 humans dead. For a species with only 2 billion people total, every loss hurt. Commander Thomas Blake stood beside him. Sir, the Council is requesting our assistance at 6 other battle zones. They want us everywhere at once. James nodded slowly. Then we split the fleet. Send ships to every location that needs us. And Thomas, start the recruitment drives on every human colony. We are going to need a lot more soldiers before this war ends. Sir, we could lose half our population in this war, Thomas said quietly. James looked out at the stars. I know. But if we don't fight, we lose everything anyway. And so does everyone else in the galaxy. Humans do not abandon their friends. Even friends who laughed at us. Even friends who gave us a death world thinking we would fail. The war had begun. And humanity had just shown the galaxy what they were truly capable of. But this was only the beginning. The real cost was still to come. The war transformed humanity from newcomers into the Council's greatest weapon. Every human colony became a factory. On Talvora, the settlement that had once grown food now produced ammunition. Factories ran day and night, churning out bullets, missiles, and railgun slugs. Children too young to fight worked in the factories alongside their parents. Everyone contributed. Lieutenant Emma Foster stood in front of a classroom filled with Sethari military engineers. The Sethari were tall, elegant beings who had mastered plasma technology 3,000 years before humans discovered electricity. Now they sat like students taking notes while a human taught them. "This is gunpowder," Emma explained, holding up a small container. "It is a simple chemical mixture. Sulfur, charcoal, and potassium nitrate. When ignited, it creates expanding gas that propels a projectile. We have been using this technology for over 1,000 years on Earth. For you it is completely new." One Sethari engineer raised a crystalline hand. "But Lieutenant Foster, this seems so crude. So simple. How can this defeat an enemy that adapts to our most advanced weapons?" Emma smiled. "Because the swarm evolved to counter energy weapons and complex technology. They have no defense against a piece of metal moving very fast. Sometimes the old ways work best." Across the galaxy, humans taught their ancient warfare to species who thought such knowledge was useless. Ballistic trajectories, armor-piercing rounds, chemical explosives. Tactics from Earth's bloody history became the galaxy's newest hope. But the cost was terrible. Admiral James Miller read casualty reports every morning. The numbers grew larger each day. Millions of humans dead. Entire colonies wiped out. Ships destroyed. Families torn apart. "Sir," Commander Thomas Blake entered the office, his face gray with exhaustion. "We have lost contact with Arcturus 7 colony. All communications are dead. Scans show no life signs remaining." James felt something inside him go cold. "How many?" 200,000 colonists, sir. All gone." James closed his eyes. 200,000 people. Families. Children. People who had trusted him to keep them safe. He wanted to scream. He wanted to cry. Instead, he took a deep breath and opened his eyes. "Mark their sacrifice in the memorial records. Continue the offensive. We push forward." What horrified the Council species was not just that humans died, but that humans willingly chose to die for others. The siege of Kepler Station became famous across the galaxy. A human marine squad of 12 soldiers was ordered to hold a defensive position while Chitauri civilians evacuated through a narrow corridor. The position was exposed, vulnerable, impossible to defend for long. Sergeant William Cooper, the squad leader, received the orders and nodded. "Understood. We will hold." "Sergeant," the Chitauri commander said, his mandibles trembling, "that position cannot be held for more than a few hours. You will all die." William looked at his 11 squad members. They were young, most of them barely 20 years old. They had families back on Earth. They had futures ahead of them. And they all nodded. "Then we hold for a few hours," William said simply. "How many civilians need to evacuate?" 200,000. "Then we hold for however long it takes to save 200,000 lives." The squad held that position for 72 hours. 3 days of constant fighting. The swarm attacked in waves. The Marines ran out of ammunition and fought with knives. When the knives broke, they fought with their bare hands. When they were too injured to fight, they used their bodies as shields. All 12 Marines died. But 200,000 Chitauri civilians escaped safely. William Cooper transmitted a final message before his death. His voice was calm, steady, like he was discussing the weather instead of dying. "Tell my wife and daughter I love them. Tell my parents I died doing what humans do best, protecting those who cannot protect themselves. No regrets. We held the line. Mission accomplished." The recording went viral across Council space. Billions of beings watched it. Many cried, though some species could not produce tears. The phrase "no regrets. We held the line" became a rallying cry. Civilians across the galaxy began calling humans the unbreakable. Dr. Helen Walsh made another breakthrough in her laboratory. She had been studying captured swarm specimens, analyzing their incredible adaptation abilities. She discovered something crucial. "Their evolution is their weakness," she explained to the military council. "They adapt so quickly that we can trick them into adapting incorrectly. We expose them to one threat, they evolve to counter it, then we hit them with something completely different. We can trigger evolutionary dead ends. Make them adapt themselves into extinction." The bioweapons she created were elegant and terrible. Viruses designed to exploit the swarm's rapid evolution, turning their greatest strength into a fatal weakness. The swarm adapted to the first virus, which made them vulnerable to the second. When they adapted to the second, the third virus killed them. Some council members called it barbaric. Dr. Walsh did not care. "They are trying to exterminate us," she said coldly. "I will use every tool available to stop them. If that makes me barbaric, then I accept the title." The tide of war began to turn. Human-led fleets pushed the swarm back system by system. The combination of kinetic weapons, chemical warfare, and bioweapons proved devastating. The swarm could not adapt fast enough to counter all three simultaneously. Council species who had laughed at humanity now requested human military advisors for every operation. Human tactical doctrines spread across the galaxy. Hit-and-run attacks, strategic retreats, acceptable losses, concepts that horrified peaceful civilizations but won battles. Ambassador Thorne compiled his complete report and presented it to the Emergency Council session. He had been documenting human behavior since they first arrived on Talvora. Now his report was thousands of pages long. "We failed to understand what strength truly means," Thorne stated, his voice carrying through the chamber. "We measured strength in technology and firepower. Humans measure strength in willpower and determination. They do not fight for territory or resources. They fight for each other. They fight for all of us. That is why they are unstoppable." High Chancellor Edmund reviewed the statistics with growing horror and admiration. Humanity has paid 44% of this war's total cost. They represent only 0.3% of our total population, yet they have suffered nearly half of all casualties. Ambassador Lyra's voice broke with emotion. Because they volunteer for the most dangerous missions. Every suicide run, every impossible defense, every last stand. Humans always step forward first. Why do they do this? Counselor Vex, who had once laughed at humanity, spoke quietly. Because Elder Mara tried to warn us. She told us humans were unstoppable. She told us we were making a mistake. We laughed at her. We were fools. The war continued for another year, but everyone knew the outcome now. The swarm was in full retreat, being pushed back toward the dark space between galaxies. Victory was coming. But the price was written in human blood. 890 million humans dead. Nearly half of their entire species. Children who would never grow up. Parents who would never see their families again. Entire colonies reduced to silent monuments. On Earth, memorial services were held every day. So many dead that there were not enough days in the year to honor them all individually. The planet that had once been divided by nations and cultures now stood united in grief. And still, humans continued to volunteer. Still, they stepped forward when the call came. Still, they stood between danger and the innocent, refusing to move, refusing to break. Ambassador Thorne watched a video of human soldiers boarding a transport ship, heading toward another battle. They sang as they marched. Songs about home, about duty, about sacrifice. They knew many of them would not return. They went anyway. What are they? Thorne whispered to himself. Elder Mara's words echoed in his memory. You mistake their kindness for weakness. No, Thorne thought. We mistook everything about them. We thought they were weak because they were kind. We thought they were simple because they were friendly. We thought they were primitive because their weapons were old. We were wrong about everything. The galaxy was learning what humanity truly was. Not conquerors. Not warriors seeking glory. Just people who refused to let others stand alone against darkness. And that refusal, that simple stubborn determination to protect others, was proving to be the most powerful force in the galaxy. 2 years after the final battle, the Galactic Council gathered once more in the Great Chamber on Zenith Prime Station. But everything had changed. The mood was somber. The delegates sat in silence instead of chatting. War had taught them humility. High Chancellor Edmund stood at the center podium. His voice was heavy with grief as he read the final casualty report to the assembled representatives. The war against the swarm is over. They have been driven beyond our borders, back into the darkness between galaxies. Our combined forces suffered 3 billion casualties across all 47 council species. He paused and his next words came slowly. Humanity lost 890 million beings. From a total population of only 2 billion. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Mathematics told the terrible story. Humans had lost nearly half their entire species. Almost half of every human who had existed was now gone. Ambassador Lyra made a sound like breaking glass, which was how her species cried. 44% of all war casualties. They were less than 1% of our population, but they paid almost half the price. Elder Mara stood in the place of honor, leaning heavily on a walking stick. Age had bent her body, but her eyes were still sharp. She had watched everything unfold exactly as the ancient records predicted. "I warned you," she said quietly. "I told you they were unstoppable. But I failed to explain why. Now you understand. They are not unstoppable because they are strong. They are unstoppable because they refuse to let others suffer alone." High Chancellor Edmund cleared his throat. "An emergency vote has been prepared. The Council proposes to grant humanity full membership, a permanent seat on the Security Council, and supreme authority over all military operations throughout Council space. They have earned the right to lead us." Every delegate voted yes. It was unanimous. For the first time in Council history, every species agreed completely. A communication request came through. Admiral James Miller's face appeared on the massive holographic display. He looked so much older now. Gray hair, deep lines around his eyes, scars visible on his neck. Beside him stood Emma Foster, Thomas Blake, Helen Walsh, and a woman named Alice Cooper, widow of the famous Sergeant William Cooper. "Admiral Miller," Edmund began formally, "on behalf of the entire Galactic Council, we offer humanity full membership and leadership of our combined military forces. You saved us. You earned the right to command us." James looked at his companions. They spoke quietly among themselves for a moment. Then Emma shook her head slightly. James turned back to the camera. "Chancellor Edmund, we are deeply honored by this offer. But we must respectfully decline the leadership positions." Shock rippled through the chamber. Delegates looked at each other in confusion. No species in recorded history had ever refused power when it was freely offered. "We are still learning from you," James continued. "Your sciences are more advanced than ours. Your cultures are rich with thousands of years of history. Your wisdom in peacetime far exceeds our own. We are students here. We simply did what needed to be done. What anyone should do when their friends are in danger." Ambassador Thorne's mandibles clicked in astonishment. "You refuse authority? You refuse to claim what you won with your sacrifice." Emma Foster leaned into the camera view. "We are not interested in power or authority. We are interested in protecting each other. All of us, every species. That is what friends do. That is what family does." The transmission ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. Councillor Vex spoke first, his voice filled with wonder. "They saved us at unimaginable cost to themselves, and they refuse to rule over us. Elder Mara, what are these humans? What kind of species behaves this way?" Mara's head crest shimmered with colors that the translators struggled to interpret. Finally they settled on something like pride mixed with sorrow. "They are what the galaxy desperately needed," she answered. "Warriors who fight for others, not for themselves. Protectors who measure victory in lives saved, not territory conquered. They are proof that true strength comes from compassion, not weapons. The ancient records called them dangerous. The records were incomplete. Humans are not dangerous. They are hope." 1 year later, Admiral James Miller walked through the memorial gardens on Talvora. The gardens stretched as far as the eye could see. Trees planted in neat rows, each one representing a non-human life lost in the war. 3 billion trees. The humans had planted every single one. Young cadets walked among the trees, both human and alien students learning together. A small Chitauri child approached James nervously. "Admiral Miller, sir? My teacher said you knew Sergeant William Cooper. Is it true he held a defensive position for 3 whole days?" James knelt down so he was at eye level with the child. "It is true. William was one of the bravest humans I ever knew. But here is the important part. He did not think he was being brave. He was just protecting his friends. Your people. That is what humans do." "But why, sir?" asked a young Sedhari student nearby. "Why sacrifice so much for us? We were not even your friends yet." Emma Foster, now Director of Interspecies Education, joined the group. "Because when you see someone in danger, you do not stop to calculate cost versus benefit. You do not check if they are the same species as you. You just act. That is not just a human trait. That is what good people do everywhere. We are just trying to show others that it is possible." Elder Mara approached slowly, walking among the memorial trees. She had moved to Talvora permanently, living her final years among the species she had tried to save decades ago. "Elder Mara," James greeted her warmly. "Would you like some tea?" They sat together at a small cafe in the gardens. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that only existed on Talvora. Purple and orange and deep blue mixing together. "Your warning to the council," James said after a moment. "You told them we were unstoppable. Did you know we would lose so many people?" Mara's scales shifted through patterns of sadness. "I knew you would pay any price to protect others. That is what my people's records showed from the old galaxy. Species like yours, they burn brightest but often shortest. You give everything always. Would you change us if you could? Emma asked gently. Mara watched a group of children playing nearby. Human children, Chitauri children, Velkarn children, Sethari children, all laughing together as equals. Playing games that mixed traditions from a dozen different worlds. Never, she said softly. The galaxy was dying before you arrived. Not from the swarm but from complacency. We had forgotten how to care beyond our own species. We had grown comfortable, isolated, selfish. You reminded us what civilization truly means. Community. Sacrifice. Love that crosses all boundaries. James smiled watching the children play. The council thought we were unstoppable warriors. But we are not warriors. We are just stubborn about protecting our family. And our family happens to include everyone now. Mara's crest glowed warm gold, a color that meant deep affection in Velkarn body language. That is exactly why you are unstoppable. Not because you fight well, though you do. Not because you are fearless, though you are brave. But because you refuse to let others stand alone. The ancient records called you dangerous. They were wrong. You are not dangerous. You are hope itself walking on two legs. As the sun finished setting on Talvora, the memorial gardens filled with people from across the galaxy. They came to remember the fallen. They came to honor the sacrifice. They came to learn from the species that taught them a simple truth. True strength is not measured in weapons or technology. It is not measured in victories or conquered territory. True strength is measured in who you choose to protect and what you are willing to sacrifice for them. Humanity had answered that question with 890 million lives. The galaxy would never forget. And more importantly, the galaxy would never be the same. The council species were learning. Learning to care beyond their own borders. Learning to sacrifice for others. Learning to be family instead of just neighbors. A human child and a Velkarn child ran past the cafe, chasing each other and laughing. They were playing a game that had no name yet because it mixed human tag with Velkarn crystal dancing. Elder Mara watched them with ancient eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. This, she said quietly, this is what makes everything worth it. Not the victory. Not the survival. But this. Children of different species playing together, not knowing that hatred or fear between their peoples ever existed. James raised his teacup. To the future then. May it be gentler than the past. Mara touched her cup to his. To the future. And to the humans who paid in blood to make it possible. The stars came out above Talvora, shining down on a garden that honored the dead and celebrated the living. And somewhere in that balance between memory and hope, the galaxy found its new purpose. Not conquest. Not isolation. But unity. Family. Home. All because one species refused to quit, refused to abandon others, and refused to let darkness win. The elders had spoken the truth. Humans were unstoppable. But not in the way the council had feared. They were unstoppable in their compassion, their loyalty, their love. And that made all the difference.